Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar for the SBRI Healthcare Competition 26. My name is Francesca Troiani. I'm a Senior Program Manager within the SBRI Healthcare team. And today, I will be your chair for this event. So first of all, this is an agenda of what you can expect to see from the event today. We will have, for the first about half an hour of this webinar, we will have two of my colleagues talk about the SBRI Healthcare program, and more specifically then of the application process and the assessment process. And then we will have a quick overview of the NHS InSites program, and this will be followed by a discussion on the priority areas for this competition, which are urgent and emergency care and stroke. There will be then a Q&A session that will be focused on the clinical priorities. So we will have the clinical leads there for you to answer your questions. Then we will have an overview of the Health Innovation Network and how they can help you with your project. There will then be a Q&A session another Q&A session that will deal with all the more technical questions you might have with regards to eligibility, the SBRI program, and the Health Innovation Network. We aim to be finished at about 3 p.m. This afternoon. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We have a Q&A box for you to ask all of your questions. They will be answered either in writing by one of my colleagues, or they will be flagged to be answered live. As I mentioned, the clinical questions will be answered in the first Q&A session, while the technical ones and the ones for our HIN colleague will be answered in the second Q&A session. If you have any technical issue, please flag it in the chat, but please remember that the questions need to be in the Q&A box. All the slides and the recording for this webinar will be uploaded on the SBRI Healthcare website. And if at any point you have any questions that is not answered today for this meeting, please drop us an email to sbri@lgcgroup.com. And that said, I will hand over to my colleague Charmaine, who will give you an overview of the SBRI Healthcare program.
Thanks, Fran. Hi, everybody. I'm Charmaine Mulligan, Senior Program Manager at SBRI Healthcare. And today I'm going to take you through an introduction to the SBRI Healthcare program. And that will give you some context on how this funding that we're launching today fits within the overall program. So for those of you who are not familiar with the program, SBRI stands for Small Business Research Initiative. Sorry, next slide, please, Fran. SBRI provides funding and support to early stage projects to enable feasibility testing and technology development, as well as to more mature innovation by supporting implementation or real-world evidence generation. The programme is funded by the Accelerated Access Collaborative, which is a partnership of several organisations who work together to streamline the adoption of new innovations into healthcare. And it includes, amongst others, the Health Innovation Network and NHS England. So the focus of the projects that we fund is set by the priorities of the NHS, and they support the NHS's long-term plan. And through the funding and the support from its networks, the programme's overall aim is to improve patient care and patient outcomes. And this can be achieved through making healthcare more efficient, bringing new innovations into the care pathway, and making sure that the organisations that deliver healthcare continue to sustain and contribute to the UK economy. And next slide, please, Fran. So this is not an exhaustive view of the healthcare funding landscape, but it highlights at what stages of the innovation journey SBRI Healthcare offers funding, which, as you can see here on the slide, is from the point of translation through to adoption. So today we're talking about phase 3 funding, which is at the later stage in the innovation development journey. And that focuses on implementing and generating evidence in real world settings. So SBRI Healthcare is aimed primarily at SMEs, although it is open to other organisations. Sorry, next. Oh, perfect, you've already moved on. It offers 100% funding to SMEs to accelerate their innovations. And the programme, although it has a robust process for making funding decisions, it is a risk-oriented programme. We aim to offer a straightforward application process and quick turnaround. And finally, it is supported by the Health Innovation Network, which you'll hear a bit more from later. So next slide, please. And SBRI Healthcare runs themed competitions that focus on specific healthcare challenges, and the themes of the funding are determined by the priorities of NHS England. We're particularly suited to SMEs, although, as I said earlier, other organisations can apply, but there needs to be a clear route to market identified. Organisations can be based anywhere in the EU, although a tangible benefit to healthcare in the UK must be demonstrated through the project. For early stage, there is phase 1 and 2 funding streams that focus on feasibility and development. And for products that are at a more mature stage of development, we have phase 3 funding, which is what we're talking about today. At this point, we would expect products to be fairly well developed so that they can be implemented into clinical or social care settings. Next slide, please. So phase 3 funding provides an opportunity to accelerate the uptake of innovations into their relevant health or social care settings. And the aim of the call is to facilitate the collection of evidence in real world settings and build on the value proposition that's required by commissioners and other decision makers. We expect projects to run for 12 months with funding available up to £500,000. Next slide, please. As you can see here, there are many innovation types that are eligible. And you can see that medical devices, in vitro devices, digital health, etc., are all eligible for SBRI Healthcare funding. Drugs and therapeutics are not eligible for the funding, as the timelines are not really very appropriate for those types of technologies. As mentioned before, the phase 3 funding is for innovations at a later stage of development. So we would expect all innovations to have all of the relevant regulatory approvals that are needed to enable them to be adopted into practice. Next slide, please. There are several possible outcomes that you might see from your projects, and some of them are included here. And different projects will have different combinations of outcome. But to give you a few examples, you might use the evidence generated through your project to fill in the gaps in your NICE early evaluation, value assessment. You might look at how you put your net zero plan into place to support the NHS's goals of being net zero by 2040. Or you might evaluate the impact that your innovation is having on health inequalities. Next slide, please. So since the programme was created, we have supported over 300 innovations and invested over £150 million. And if you go to our website, you can see more details about these innovations and a selection of case studies of projects that have gone through our programme. Next slide, please. And so this gives you an overview of the organisations that we have funded in our portfolio. You can see that our portfolio is arranged by themes, which can be settings, clinical area, or a key NHS challenge. And as you can see in the portfolio, the majority is made up of SMEs, with a few universities, NHS trusts, or charities. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of the impact that our portfolio has generated so far. And one of the impacts that we've had is that over 100 companies that are within the portfolio are now realising commercial revenues. Also, I just mentioned that we've made an investment of 150 million, and you can see here that that's actually led to over 700 million raised in private investment. So you can say that for each pound that SBRI Healthcare invests, nearly £5 of further value is generated. Alongside this, you can see that there are additional economic impacts, but more importantly is the people that are reached, either through collaborations, through trials, or as the beneficiaries of health innovations. Next slide, please. So on top of the NHS and the Health Innovation Network, we have a growing number of collaborators and partners that help us provide support to innovators throughout their journey. Some are focused on a specific health need and others for specialist expertise. At pre-competition stage, so the stage we're at now, we organise webinars, drop-in sessions, all to engage with innovators and help through the application process. Once awarded, and that's what we call in competition, applicants will have access to a number of workshops. This varies depending on what the needs of the portfolio are, but you can see on the slide there are some of the things we've done in the past. So it could be on public and patient engagement, intellectual property, alongside things like using the NICE meta tool to map their innovation. And then support also continues after your project is finished, and we have what we call our in-portfolio support. And again, this varies, but it can include things like networking or showcase events, as well as webinars on specific topics, such as regulatory or adoption, that help and block the barriers to spread and adoption. Also, we record the impact of our projects through case studies, our annual survey, and our annual report. And next slide, please. So today's launch event is to let you know about 2 different phase 3 competitions. The first one is focusing on stroke, and in particular on the key areas of early diagnosis, rehabilitation, and life after stroke. And you can find more detail about these 3 key areas in the challenge brief document on the website, and you'll also hear more about them a little later in this webinar. Next slide, please. And then the second competition is addressing challenges in urgent and emergency care. Again, there are 3 key areas. The first is health and care outside of hospitals, accessing the right care and reducing demand. The second is reducing length of stay and improving discharge. And finally, the third is supporting the workforce. You'll find more details about these key areas in the challenge brief, and you'll also hear more about them later in this webinar. So that gives you a whistle-stop tour of SBRI Healthcare, and it puts into context where this phase 3 funding competitions sit within the programme. So I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague Mary, who'll give you some insights about the application process.
All right. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Charmaine, for the introduction. I'm going to be going over the assessment process and how to apply. Could I get the next slide, please? So before I go into the nitty-gritty details about the application process through the portal, I wanted to give you a brief overview of the steps involved in the competition. So the application is an online form, and it's on the applications portal, which is available for submission for this competition between the 31st of July and the 18th of September at 1 p.m. So after submitting, each application will undergo shortlisting, and this is where your application will be assessed by our reviewers that include experts with challenge-specific knowledge, but also those with commercial and implementation expertise. If your project is shortlisted, Applicants will be invited to interview with the panel, currently scheduled for December. So we're aiming to announce successful applicants soon after this, and we'll carry out due diligence and the contracting process for projects to start in January 2025. Can I get the next slide, please? So this highlights the key dates for this competition. So I'd like to highlight that the panel meetings are online, and you would only need to attend your allocated interview slot within those 3 mentioned dates. So you don't have to attend all 3 days or the entire time. And as always, we'll confirm the exact date and time by email as soon as we can. Next slide, please. So now we move on to the SBRI Healthcare website. And from here, you can find all the information and documents you need to read when you're putting your proposal together. And I strongly recommend that you read everything. And to access these, you'd click on competitions and click on open competitions. And for the competition that you're applying for, click on the read more button. Next slide, please. Then this page will open up. The key dates are along the left, and the button to get to the application portal is on the top right. If you scroll to the bottom, that's where all the supporting documents live. So please read these carefully, as they are useful. One example is our development agreement terms, and which is effectively the contract. These terms are non-negotiable, so please do have a read and make sure you're happy with it before putting all the effort into applying. Next slide, please. So now about the application itself. All this information can be found in the invitation to tender document. The applications will be assessed based on 8 criteria, and they all have different weightings attached to them. This will include things like evidence of your innovation itself, the project plan, competitive advantage, IP management, commercialization and adoption plans. We also look at equity of access, your consideration into public and patient involvement and engagement, and the net zero agenda. Finally, we also look at the team composition and cost justification. So once you've done the reading and you do want to apply, and you need to navigate to the SBRI Healthcare website and submit your application through the application portal. Next slide, please. So accessing the application portal brings you to this page. This is called the Research Management System, and we call it the RMS. If you've got an account already, then just simply log in. If you don't have an account, you'll need to register for one. And note that these accounts need to be manually approved by our team during office hours in the work week. So I'd strongly advise that you do this as soon as possible, just in case there are any issues. Next slide, please. Once you're logged in, you need to update your personal details using the Manage My Details tab on the left. If you've applied before, then it's worth checking if these details are still correct. This particular information is used to populate part of the application, so it's important to keep it up to date. And once you've updated your details, you can start a new grant application by clicking My Applications, again on the left tab. Next slide, please. So there are multiple competitions open. So please apply for the correct one. The one we're talking about today is SBRI Competition 26, Phase 3, Stroke or Urgent and Emergency Care. And once you found it, click on Apply. Next slide, please. Once you get to this page, you'll notice the little question marks. These are prompts and suggestions for you to consider. The information used should be used together with the information in the Guidance for Applicants document on the SBRI Healthcare website. And you don't need to complete the application in one go. You can save the changes you've made by clicking the appropriate button at the top right corner. Next slide, please. As you proceed through the form, you'll come across a section about teams, which will include your team members, any clinical partners, subcontractors, advisors, etc. Team members are individuals based in the same organization as the lead applicant or organization. If you have a collaborator, then you should make use of the clinical partner, subcontractor, or advisor sections instead. All the members in your team must have an RMS account first. And if they don't, you won't be able to find them and add them to the application. And if they're not on the application, this means that they won't be able to attend the interview panel. Just remember that. Very important. Next slide, please. Once you've added them to the application, they need to navigate to the My Co-Applications tab on the left side of their account, which brings them to this screen. They need to confirm their participation in the project, and you can only submit the application once everyone has confirmed their participation. The portal allows you to track which of your co-applicants have confirmed their participation in the application summary page. So we hope this is helpful. I'd like to stress that this can be the most tedious part of the application to complete. So I strongly suggest that you prompt your partners and collaborators to register as soon as possible to avoid any issues. I also want to flag that if you miss the application deadline because of this, we will not consider taking your application forward. Once everyone's added and you're happy with the details of your application, you can go ahead and submit it. Yeah, and that's all from me. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A chat box and we'll address them at the end of the webinar, or feel free to email us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both Mary and Charmaine. And now, if I can call on Jana Schulte, don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, apologies, Jana, to give a short introduction to the NHS InSites program.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Francesca. Yeah, I'm Jana. I'm here to represent the InSites program, which is another program sponsored by the Accelerated Access Collaborative. And this might be interesting to those of you who are still looking for an NHS partner for this application. So if we can move on to the next slide. The NHS InSites program is a collaboration of 18 NHS sites. Majority of them are acute care providers, but we also have an ICB, two ambulance services and two specialist children's hospital in the program. And these sites have come together because they're all quite keen on getting better at adopting innovations and working well together with innovators. So if you're still looking for a partner to gather this real world evidence for your application, then please reach out to us. The contact address is here on the slide, mse.sepinsights@nhs.net, and I'm sure we'll share the details as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jana. Apologies for the incorrect pronunciation. And as mentioned earlier, we now have some clinical expertise to introduce you the challenges that this competition is going to address. And so, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind just popping on screen and yeah. So
can you see me now?
yes.
Fantastic. Apologies that I've had to join on my phone. For some reason, my NHS laptop wouldn't work on Zoom. So sorry, I'm on the phone. So I'm Michelle Long. I'm the National Specialty Advisor for Stroke. I'm also a clinical specialist neurophysio by background, and I'm here just to give a brief overview of the challenges that we face in stroke and what we might be able to do to partner with you guys to improve some of our service delivery. Next slide, please. So you may be asking, why stroke? Well, stroke is the fourth leading cause of death in the UK, with 35,000 deaths annually. There are 100,000 strokes admissions each year in the UK. So prevention, treatment and management of stroke represents a real opportunity for us to have significant impact, both for personal impact for the patients, but also societally and for the economy. It's not just from the perspective of health provision that we want to look at this. So we have 1.3 million stroke survivors living with disability, and they require help to carry out daily tasks. The cost to provide this help, both from formal and informal carers, has a significant impact on the economy. So it's worth noting that 1 in 4 strokes are also occur in working age people, and that this impacts on their financial security, their self-worth and their prospects for employment. The fact that it impacts on their self-worth can drive incident rates of depression and anxiety, and it can result in that reduced productivity, both economically and societally. However, it's not just the stroke survivors that are paying that cost. So a lot of our informal carers are also of working age, and so we need to be mindful of that. And it's worth noting that informal carers also then have a secondary consequence on their well-being, their financial security, and their societal productivity. So it's taking that wider view. It's both about the patient and the carer. Next slide, please. Okay, let me just. So the NHS long-term plan and the stroke programme vision is to prevent stroke by earlier detection and treatment of things like atrial fibrillation, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. We want to make sure that more patients receive optimal treatment by improving imaging and access to clot busting and clot retrieval and clot extraction. By improving access to these and provision of stroke rehab, we are hoping to get a much better outcome for our patients. The new guidelines state that patients should receive 3 hours of face-to-face therapy per day for acquisition of motor skills, and that they should also be active for 6 hours a day. To achieve these aims, workforce modernisation is going to be integral, along with consideration of how we deliver the whole pathway. Being mindful that the integrated community stroke service model came into policy in February 22, and that consideration needs to be given to how we optimise rehabilitation in community settings, which may at times present significant geographic challenges. So we've got the whole pathway to consider, that pre-hospital end and also that community end. Working with partners to understand how we can improve service provision across that whole pathway, and testing implementation and improvement initiatives in the real world is key, and that's why we're here today. Next slide, please. So one of the challenges we want to look at is that early diagnosis. So most people have their stroke onset outside of the hospital. Ambulance crews and those emergency call handlers are our first point of contact for diagnosis and decisions. Other conditions can also present as stroke, and present as stroke mimics. So to maximise the efficient use of stroke resources and to speed up access to essential treatments, there's a need to improve early identification and differentiation between ischemic stroke, hemorrhagic stroke, and other conditions that mimic. Improving identification of stroke mimics so they don't attend hospital unnecessarily, and ensuring that patients are suitable for thrombectomy are identified earlier is a significant challenge. And we're looking to work with partners that have some potential solutions. We want to look at faster and more timely urgent emergency response. We want to look at the accurate identification of potential stroke and TIA patients. We want to look at accurate identification of candidates for thrombolysis, thrombectomy, and intracerebral hemorrhages. We want to look at ways that we might be able to improve pre-hospital validated triage. We want to look at remote solutions for improved access to healthcare professionals. We want to look at the diagnostics and looking at things like apps, maybe in ambulance settings, the workforce to support upskill and to upskill, and tools for early and regular communications with patients and carers. We want to look at AI tools for improved diagnostic efficiency and accuracy. Next slide, please. With regards to rehabilitation, so why is rehab important? Well, it's been shown that greater amounts of physical therapy result in better patient outcomes, and it's therefore essential that patients receive the optimal amount of therapy for their needs. It should be commenced as early as possible and continue for as long as needed. So these interventions should be monitored and outcome measures used to guide our ongoing plans. So we need to improve delivery of needs-led, high-intensity rehab, and we need to improve provision of secondary prevention as an integral part of that rehabilitation so that we maximise opportunities to prevent further disabling events. And we need to improve follow-up care so that secondary complications such as intractable depression, anxiety, fatigue, spasticity, pain and deconditioning don't erode that quality of life, and that we maximise opportunities for that societal contribution. So things that are going to look at how we improve rehabilitation are key. And as I said earlier, rehabilitation has some real significant challenges because we have rehab across the whole pathway, and rehab doesn't just include clinic-based and inpatient settings, it also includes that community setting where there can be significant challenges in terms of rural versus urban populations. So the kinds of innovations that we might be looking for are things like screening and assessment innovations to improve access to effective treatments, personalised interventions that support enhanced inpatient rehab and integrated community stroke services, solutions that help the workforce to provide more rehab services to stroke patients, validated technologies to augment provision of a minimum of 3 hours of multidisciplinary therapy a day, tools that enable the management of common stroke complications, apps and digital tools that provide recovery and integrated feedback to patients and support that sustained self-management, and tools that improve stroke rehab care pathway and address any inefficiencies in the health system. So it's a fairly big ask from the rehab community, I would say. Next slide, please. And then we have the Life After Stroke Challenge. Now, survivors of stroke and their families have to deal with real long-term consequences of stroke, which can relate to physical, emotional, and cognitive impairments. So it's really overarching every aspect of their life, and it can limit activities and participation. So supported self-care and management programs with regular follow-ups and practical support are essential to supporting that life after stroke, that lifelong quality of life. Despite guideline recommendations, though, long-term stroke management has been really quite a neglected area. So we want to look at what we can do to improve this as an offer. The kind of things we're thinking of are things like technologies which provide community-based personalised support, psychological and neuropsychological rehabilitation tools facilitating that social participation of stroke survivors, tools that provide stroke survivors and their families access to information that they need, and education tools to equip the health and social care workforce so that they're stroke specific enabled. So those are our three challenges from stroke, and thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So before we go ahead, I've noticed a few things in the Q&A box. There are a few requests for contacts. So Elizabeth from the East Suffolk and North Essex NHS Trust has written down her contact detail. We will, and I believe there's also Helen Hunt from Health Innovation West Midlands. So there are some contacts in the chat, in the Q&A box. We will be leaving them there in case people want to write them down. We are not allowed to share them afterwards. So if you want to get in contact with anybody who's shared their details in the Q&A box, please write them down now. The other thing I've noticed, there were a couple of questions about sharing slides. Yes, they will be shared, both the slides and the recording of this webinar will be shared. And I think that, Michelle, if you are happy with that, we can maybe get started with some of the questions that are in the Q&A box. So there is a question from Gino Miele, who asks, I note that the scope is early diagnosis, rehabilitation, and life after stroke. My company, GeneDrive, have developed a rapid point-of-care genetic test for stratification of stroke patients eligible for the antiplatelet clopidogrel. Apologies, that is a difficult word. The test has undergone review by the NICE Diagnostic Assessment Programme with final guidance due on the 31st of July. Draft guidance recommending its use as the point care test in ischemic stroke and transient ischemic attack. Reading the call scope, it would seem that this doesn't quite fit, but I'd be grateful for your advice on this and whether a diagnostic test that is used to reduce risk of recurrent stroke by ensuring patients are on the right antiplatelet treatment is within or outwith the scope of this call. Michelle, do you have an opinion on this?
So I know that the stroke program team are looking at this. It is outside of the scope of this brief, but I know that the stroke program team are looking at some specific aspects of this. So I think the best thing to do would be for me to take your contact details and to escalate that through the stroke program team to Natalie, who's the program lead. I know that they're looking at it as a separate item. That's why I'm suggesting it's probably outside of this.
Thank you for that, Michelle. So let's see what other questions we have for Michelle in the chat. Michelle, Gino has also shared his email address. So in terms of, we have a few questions in terms of the competition itself. So one is about the percentage of budget that would grant approvers expect to see towards the evaluation. I think this one is more for me than for you, Michelle. So we don't really have a specific percentage that we would expect to see going towards the evaluation. However, as Mary mentioned earlier in her presentation, one of the assessment criteria for this competition is value for money. So all of the costs that you are requesting for your project would need to be fully justified. Oh, there's a raised hand. Alexandra, I am not sure whether can you unmute yourself and ask your question? I don't know whether that is whether that works. It doesn't look like it. Alexandra, would you mind writing your question in the Q&A box? Apologies for that. So if you have any questions specific for Michelle, just want to flag that this is the time for it, because Michelle will drop off in a little bit, so you will not have the chance of asking her any further question after this time. Question for Michelle. There we go. How about screening using simple tools and identifying the care pathway? Will that be a sensible approach rather than a specific product?
Yeah, that's a good approach. Yeah, being able to screen patients, understand need, the integrated community stroke service model and rehabilitation is a needs-led service. So screening tools are there to identify the needs of patients for us to then nuance the service offer up and down depending on those needs. So if that's the kind of thing you're talking about pathway revision, if you like, based on need, then yeah.
Thank you. Apologies, the Q&A box moves, so it's so is the competition only focused on stroke and emergency care, or would innovation in the area of digital health and workforce efficiency be eligible for this competition? Now, we do have a part of workforce efficiency that goes in within the two competitions. However, they do focus on stroke and urgent and emergency care. So if your innovation regards workforce, improving workforce efficiency in these two in these two areas, then it might be eligible depending on all the other assessment criteria. Michelle, do you want to expand a little bit on what kind of workforce efficiency might be helpful in the stroke pathway?
Yeah, so at the minute we have pathways which are quite fragmented. We have multiple providers doing different aspects of the pathway. So if we take rehabilitation as an example, patients are often assessed in acute and then they get discharged out into the community and they'll be reassessed again. So if we go back to that question earlier around screening tools, if we had more consistent screening tools across the pathway, then would we always need a qualified practitioner doing that reassessment in second phase of the pathway? Possibly not. That's something worth looking at. And then it's also around those skills and understanding what the needs of the patients are and to match the skills to the need, and what that tells us in terms of the type of workforce we need, whether we can manage some things with support workers and have a differently skill mixed team. So those are a couple of examples of things that you could look at.
Thank you. Hello, Michelle. Sorry, it moved, it disappeared. Oh, there we go. Hello, Michelle. Would objective chronological data for walking aid use to look at trend of functional decline be helpful in the funding call remit?
Be helpful in the, sorry, I didn't hear the last one.
In the funding call remit.
I'm not sure I understand that. So would...
If I interpret this correctly, I believe that Michael is asking whether objective chronological data for walking aid use to look at trends of functional decline would be something that is in scope and would be an acceptable idea for an innovation to tackle stroke, the stroke pathway.
So assessment, so outcome measures, assessments of function would be within scope. Obviously, we'd be hoping with our stroke survivors that it wouldn't be a measurement of decline, but a measurement of successive rehabilitation. But because our patients are multi-conditions often, because they're elderly, significant proportion of them, and frail, then having consistent measures that can be used across multi-pathologies would be useful, and you'd be able to take that long-term conditions approach to monitoring someone's physical performance. So if that's that angle you're coming at, then yes, that would be useful.
Michael, does this answer your question? If it doesn't, just please feel free to elaborate in the Q&A box with another question. I am sorry. I am unsure I understand this question correctly, Annie. Implementing a device into a clinical setting to generate evidence around where it best fits into the existing care pathway. Am I missing a part of the question? If you could expand maybe a little bit. So, Michelle, I think this one is also another one for you. From James, who says, we have invented a novel, UK patent granted, portable, lightweight, affordable and easy to use piece of exercise equipment, specifically designed to be used while seated. We believe this product will transform personal mobility for all, but most especially the aging population and stroke survivors to prevent falls. Would these be within scope? We have a partnership with a community daycare facility and are looking to launch as a wellness home exercise product rather than a medical device.
Yeah, absolutely within scope, both for the rehab end and for the life after stroke end, I would have thought.
Right, thank you. If our idea fits into two categories, do we have to choose one? I would say that you should try to find the category that fits your idea better. Because this is purely from IT point of view, because the system will only allow you to pick one category, one sub-challenge for your application. But if your innovation fits two categories, you are more than welcome to explain how it does so in your application, in the body of your application. Does the product or solution need to fulfill all the elements outlined? Early diagnosis, rehabilitation, and life after stroke. Or can it look to be a solution for one criteria within this? I don't know if you agree with me, Michelle, but I kind of feel like finding something that fulfills all of it would be a bit complex, and maybe some kind of holy grail.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
So no, it wouldn't need to fulfill all of them. As I mentioned earlier, the system will actually only allow you to select one of the sub challenges. So that is I hope that helps. So following on from the previous questions regarding eligibility, is service improvement pathways for AF, which I assume is atrial fibrillation detection and prevention, within scope? Michelle, what would you say?
Yes, that aligns to the early diagnostics. Yeah, that's within scope.
Oliver asks, our startup Pyrexia works on automating back office workflows across healthcare with a strong focus on workforce efficiencies like recruitment, compliance, and governance. In the context of stroke and urgent care, these would facilitate staff movement between organizations. For instance, from partner organization to help cover staffing gaps, quicker onboarding from 6 weeks to 2 days, and much lower workloads for ensuring staff are meeting their compliance and governance requirements. We can also support international recruitment and therefore help recruitment into rota gaps, etc. Is this something that would be within scope? So, Michelle, from the stroke challenge point of view, would something like this be in scope?
I would say it sounds like it's largely a workforce management tool rather than looking at efficiencies of how the MDT as a specialist entity in stroke works. So I would say possibly not. It sounds much more like it would be a trust focus, almost like a health rostering piece of IT or software. But I may have misunderstood that.
Oliver, if we do have misunderstood, please let us know. We can get back to that. Okay, I think we can go. Oh. How will the assessment be conducted if we design a pathway and plot various initiative solutions across the pathway, if companies willing to collaborate? Will the matchmaking, it's gone. Will the matchmaking be facilitated by AAC? Will collaborations, if adding synergistic value proposition, be assessed favorably? So we do not provide a matchmaking service. So unfortunately, we as SBRI Healthcare will not be able to help with that. Collaborations are definitely allowed. You're more than welcome to find collaborators. However, just want to point out that contracts will be signed with one single organization, the lead organization, and that every collaborator you want to have on board will need to be onboarded as a subcontractor or a clinical partner. Can an SME apply on its own, of course, with a collaboration with an NHS trust for Pathway to Impact, or should there be a higher education institution involvement? An SME can apply on its own. Again, yes, with the collaboration with an NHS trust, but you don't need to have a higher education institution involved as well. The only thing that is required is a collaboration with an NHS or clinical partner. Is NHS hospital site considered a clinical partner? Yes. I cannot see any further question for Michelle.
Francesca, I
yes.
just wanted to, so I did email Natalie regarding the genomics question, and she has said that the genomics team at NHSE are leading that piece of work, and our national clinical director and our national programme lead have a meeting with them tomorrow, and they think that Gene Drive are already linked into that, and they recommend not duplicating work. So definitely not part of this piece of work, but you are engaged and involved.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess that Gina, you got your answer that. Well, in that case, Michelle, I would like to thank you very much for joining us today. There's another raised hand. Wait, I'm going to ask you for one more second in case it's a question for you. Jessica, are you able to unmute yourself and ask your question? Again, I'm not sure that works because of the format of the webinar. So would you be able to write your question down in the Q&A box, please? I do not see, as I said, I do not see any further questions for Michelle. So I would like to thank you very much, Michelle. That was extremely helpful. Thank you also for sharing your email address. And I believe that we have a bit of an issue with our next speaker. So I will be asking, if that is okay, Nikki to come in and talk to us about the Health Innovation Network, if she's with us.
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
I will just move to your slides then. There we go.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Nikki Taylor and I am a Programme Manager for the UEC mission at the Health Innovation Southwest. I'm here today to talk to you about the wider network, but some of it will reflect on what's going on in the Southwest, because of course that's where I work. But there'll be similarities across the network, which is across the country. So next slide, please. Oh, I seem to be missing a slide. I thought I had one with a picture of the country on it, but it might come later. Okay, so the network, what does the network do? The Health Innovation Network is a collaborative of a number of health innovation organisations that are across the country. There are 15 of us, and we identify, empower and advance the work of innovation and implementation across the NHS and social care arena and the whole pathway. So we look for innovations and improvements and help to solve or work towards solving specific problems within the NHS with the NHS. So everything we do is with the NHS or with the system partners, not on our own. But we create conditions for an innovation pipeline. We empower innovators and develop improvements for further ideas, and we look at the front, supporting the people on the ground, but supporting new innovations into tests of change and ways of working in the NHS itself. And we look at the uptake and the spread and adoption of new improvements and innovations across national programmes and local initiatives. But what does that mean? So next slide, please. So this is the Southwest specific, but every other health innovation organisation that you may be connected with would have something that's quite similar, not exactly the same, but similar. So we develop and we evaluate real world evaluations and real world innovations. So here in the Southwest, we've got a really big team of evaluation leads that go in and actually work on real world evaluations. So if you need any help with your project and your application on that side of evaluating your project, we often help local initiatives and innovators with that concept, and so will all the others. We create the conditions to innovate, so we support you and your innovation as to how you can look at it as a pathway, look at it as a whole system pathway, look at it as implementing within the whole system rather than just your product on its own. And we help to adopt and spread proven innovations at scale. So when we've got something that's from NHS England that's been approved, all the right checks have been in place, and we help to adopt it and spread it at scale. And I can give you some examples of that if you need them regarding digital systems that we've put across the country, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, so what have we done? This just gives you a bit more context. So in the Southwest, we have had 200,000 estimated patient and service users that have benefited from the work that we do in a variety of different programs and projects and ways of working. We've got 114 projects currently that we are working with ICBs and ICSs and 16 member organisations in the Southwest. Across the country, the whole network has raised a huge sum of money for funding leverage to help the work of the national network. So we help with funding bids, we help with putting bids in place, like with the SBRI one here today, but a number of other bids as well. We can support innovators to put together a bid, a proposal, value proposition, a business case, whatever it is that they need to help support them in applying for funding. And we've created 554 jobs across the national HIN network collectively and collaboratively in the year of 2023. Next slide, please. So this will be different for every area, but for example, in the Southwest, we cover the peninsula, so it's Devon, Cornwall and Somerset. And we know our area very well. So when we've got innovations that want to be embedded in our system, we have got knowledge of the rural and coastal challenges that we have in our area, for instance. We've got knowledge of, transportation, the issues around transportation, the workforce, and all the different elements to our area that makes us unique. Our target audience often is to do the 65 plus, because we have a lot of people in the Southwest that are over 65. And so healthy aging activities, etc., are often embedded in our area very specifically. Next slide, please. So we are unique and we have lots of health and care challenges in our area, and your specific HINs or your Health Innovation Network in your area will know what they are. It helps you as an innovator to come into our space and help, and we can help you with the system pressures, the gaps, the health equity, the access to patients, the trials that you need to put your innovation through. This slide just gives you a few more details about, you know, our context in the Southwest, like I say, but it will be different for each area. Next slide, please. In the Southwest and in some of the Health Innovation Network areas, not all, there is a mission-based approach. So we've got something called the Peninsula Innovation and Research Partnership that we've put in place with all of the universities, all of the NHS trusts, ICBs, and high-level strategic leaders that have signed up to actually pull together as a region. So where there is something that is effective that can help the region as a collaborative, we will work together with all of these systems, all of these partners to try and help research and innovation to go into embed into the Southwest. So this really helps and enables innovators that want to come forward and put forward an idea that's been clinically proven or proven to be spreadable in our area to come in and actually help you put that innovation in place. Next slide, please. Our missions, we've got 5 of them. One of them is actually for UEC, urgent and emergency care, and that's something that I'm working on specifically. But we literally work across the system and the whole pathway, not just the emergency department. We're looking at the prevention end all the way through to the end of life, and transfer of care in between, and the communities and everything that goes on in between. So it's a very large sort of mission base that we look at. But we look at discovering, developing, and deploying projects or innovations across the patch of the UEC mission. There are other missions involved as well in our partnership, but the mission here today is the UEC one that we're specifically talking about. And other HINs or health innovation networks will have something similar where they discover, they develop, and they deploy new spreadable innovations and implementations of improvement. Next slide, please. So this is just to say thank you for listening to me. There's far more that we can offer, and all different HINs have got a whole array of teams available to help support innovations and new ideas coming into the NHS. So please get in touch with either myself or there's a generic email address on here that's for our Health Innovation Southwest team. I can help forward it on, or just look on Google for your local Health Innovation Network. They will be called something along the lines similar to Health Innovation, and then at Wessex or West of England or your area. They're really, you know, great people to work with, and so come along and ask them if they can support you in any way, specifically on the evaluation, on the helping you form your bid writing, and then business case and value proposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. This was very helpful. I'm going to go through the questions we have in the Q&A box, but before doing that, I just wanted to point out that indeed the format of this event does not allow participants to unmute themselves. So if you could please write your questions in the Q&A box, we will pick them up. But yeah, that would be appreciated. Thank you. So let's start going through the rest of the Q&A box. There's a question that asks whether a startup can submit for 2 competitions, example competition 25 and competition 26. It is 2 different proposals. Yes. So you can submit more than 1 application. You can also submit more than 1 application to the same competition, as long as they are significantly different projects that you are proposing, but also as long as you make sure that if both or 3 or however many probably not too many, of your projects are going to be recommended for funding and awarded, you need to ensure that your team will have capacity to carry out all of the projects. Sam asks, we are looking for funding to support a user trial that will allow for CE marking. We have gathered some data on safety and efficacy to date, but need a definitive trial to get us into the NHS. Will this project be eligible? So we do require that the innovations that the innovation applying for this competition do already have all the regulatory approval, or they are close to obtaining them and already in use clinically, not in a research setting, in a clinical setting, in at least one NHS site. So that would probably be a no, Sam, unless you can prove that the CE marking is coming quite soon and you've already been using the innovation, but it looks like you do still need a trial. So you would be a little bit one step behind what is eligible for this competition. Team asks, is the phase 3 application only open to those projects that have received phase 1 and 2 funding? No. Phase 1 and 2 are a completely different part of our funding offer. So they're separate. You do not need to have received phase 1 or phase 2 funding to be able to apply for phase 3. Oh, sorry. My Q&A box is moving. Has there been consideration for the burden and time required to apply for ethics and receive approval versus the expectation for a robust evaluation? In our experience, gaining ethical approval can eat a big chunk of time, leaving room for evaluation of about 6 months only. So we understand that ethical approval can take a long time, and that is one of the reasons why we do require that all of the innovations that are that would apply for this competition and for all phase 3 competitions would be already CE marked and would have a smaller requirement in terms of ethics and various approval, because we do understand that 6 months, that 12 months is not a large amount of time, but unfortunately that is the maximum amount that is that we allow for this specific competition. Generally speaking, would most of the applications have an SME as the host organization? So as we said, this particular program, the SBRI program, is specifically suited and suitable for SMEs. However, it's not necessary for an SME to be the lead organization. We have had lead organization being universities, charities, or NHS trusts. As long as my colleague Charmaine mentioned earlier, as long as there is a clear route to commercialization for your innovation. Will there be a chance to meet other innovators who are applying? There could be a great opportunity to work in collaboration. Unfortunately, we do not offer this service. After the projects are awarded, we will have events for the whole cohort, but we do not offer a service of matchmaking before that. Do you need an NHS partner to apply for this grant? Yes, you do need an NHS partner to apply for this grant. As this focuses on implementation studies, it is required that there's an NHS partner already on board at the time of submission of your application to ensure the panel who will be assessing your application that there is actually interest in carrying out your study in a site. How can NHS sites not registered as partners in InSites program advertise themselves for partnering with companies in the competition? How can NHS sites? Unfortunately, I am not able to answer this question. I would recommend you, I believe that Yana did drop an email address in her slides. The slides will be shared after this webinar. So if you could follow up with them directly, that would probably give you would give you a better answer. Would innovations that is up and running live in contracted hospital considered TRL9 actually qualified through successful mission operations? I don't think I understand this question. Can maybe call in on one of my colleagues if Charmaine or Mary understand what.
Yeah. Hi, Fran. I think for me, what I understand the question to say is that if they have an innovation that is already up and running in a hospital, so that the innovation is TRL9, would this qualify to be eligible for the call? That's what I assume that the question is asking. In which case, I think the answer is yes.
So one of the eligibility requirements is for the innovation to either be CE marked or already in use clinically in at least one NHS site. So I would say that provided that all the other eligibility criteria are met and that the innovation fits within the challenge brief, that would be in principle eligible for the competition. Do class 2 devices need to be certified prior to phase 3 start date? If by certified you mean receiving, if they need CE marking or UKCA marking, then yes, that is the case. All the medical devices need a CE or a UKCA certification before the start. Just to double check, if we are applying for funding in partnership with another company, both our companies need to be registered with the RMS portal. Yes, so any collaborator or any subcontractor or clinical partner that you want to have in your application needs to be registered on the RMS portal, because to be able to add them to your application, you will need to find them on the system. As Mary mentioned earlier, this can take some time, so I would recommend to ask your partners to register on the system as soon as possible. Also, a reminder that partnerships are allowed and encouraged in terms of having subcontractors in your application, but that the contract will be with only one organization, and that is the host or lead organization that has put the application in. Testing a device in a community setting to see how it could ease pressure on urgent care services. It depends on the type of community setting. So it would be within like easing pressure on the urgent care services is in scope of the challenge brief. We do require an NHS site, a clinical partner, to be part of the application. But if you're looking at community NHS partners that are closer to the community setting and not specifically secondary care hospitals, that would be in principle acceptable. I'm a little uncertain as to whether our innovation fits into one or more competitions, the other competition being phase 1. How can I differentiate? Do you have a slide that shows phase 1, 2, and 3 example criteria? So would anyone, Mary, would you like to take this one? Or Charmaine?
Sorry. I was unmuting myself. Yes, so phase 1 is typically first things that you're trying out, things that are very, very early stage innovations. And phase 3 innovations are typically products and innovations that are ready to implement. So you should really just take a look at your innovation and put it in the appropriate competition, really. Yeah.
Thank you. And in terms of having,
I hope that addresses your answer. Yeah, your question.
In terms of whether we have something that shows the differences, well, first of all, we will be having another event like this one, but for our next phase 1 competitions, which are women health and antimicrobial resistance. There will be next week, I believe. So you will be able to have a bit more information on phase 1 and what it entails in this event, but also on our website. Looking at the different challenge briefs, you will be able to look at the differences. Could the award be used to fund recruitment of a member of staff to help us roll out a successful pilot scheme into the NHS stroke wards? So we do fund, having a site as a subcontractor will also allow you to hire some of their staff to help you out with the project, and that those are funds that you that are allowed in the that are allowed for this award. Can you give advice on the costs, day rate we should use for our employees deployed on the project? Can we consider wider employee costs or simply payroll cost? And related, where we subcontract in certain skills, do you issue guidance on acceptable rates? We do not have guidance on the rates that you are that you would be using for your staff or subcontractors. That is something that you will need to provide us yourself. But a reminder is that all of the salaries and all of the requested funds will need to reflect fair market value, and that your project will be assessed on value for money as well. So again, all of the costs will need to be fully justified. And I believe that our last speaker is here. Julian, if you would like to unmute yourself. There we go.
No, I'm so sorry. IT issues abounded. But just to thank everyone for joining. And obviously, the urgent and care pathway is a really important pathway at the moment, both in terms of safety and in terms of where patients are flowing through the NHS as a whole. And therefore, this call for innovation and research into this area, I think, is really, really important about how we go ahead through the urgent care department. We're really looking at making sure that we're evidence-based and listening and learning about the innovations which are out there. So I'm really keen that we do get as many people who are interested in doing research and developing innovations within this space as possible, because it really does make a massive difference to patients as they go through the different flow parts. We can go to the next slides. I'm conscious of time, but I think people will know that there are long waits within our emergency department, but the cause of those waits in the emergency department is not necessarily within the ED. It's actually to do with discharge and flow. And so any innovations in those sort of areas which allow the flow of patients is going to be very important. It's also about the number of patients who are presenting at the front door. And we know that not all of those patients need the care of an ED department and of a hospital. And the more that we can start to segregate our populations and care for them in different environments and use innovation to support us in that, be it a hospital at home, be it in virtual wards, be it with remote monitoring, even to do with how do we get patients to alter behavior, some of the behavioral insights type of work as well, are going to be really important in these areas, so that we're making sure that we're using as much evidence base on plans that go forward to make sure that we are developing the urgent emergency care pathways in the right way, is what I would say. The next slide. So we've developed plans around this, and you'll see, you'll have seen in the literature the recovery plan, and we'll talk about that. And really what that is to say, well, how do you reduce occupancy within the hospital? And we can do that either by increasing the number of beds, and there may be some evidence for that, but equally it's about making sure that our length of stay is low and we're increasing our discharge and ability to discharge patients from the home, but also expanding those services in the community and ensuring that we've got the workforce in the right places. So the other part of innovation is what workforce, what training do we need to develop that workforce of the future? And the next slide. Remember the workforce, the NHS long-term workforce plan around train, retain and reform. So please pay attention to those when you're thinking of areas that you may want to research and innovate in. And I think the last slide after this. And then it's just really making sure that we are following through of those different places that we need to see improvements in. It could be around better management of long-term conditions. It could be around how do we triage and gain clinical information before patients attend either urgent care or the GP or ED. How do we make sure there's good access to primary care? How do we increase in making sure that patients who need continuity of care have that continuity of care, and then making sure that those patients, as they come into the hospital, flow through our departments, flow through into the right areas, get the right specialist advice, and then how do we work together with social teams to ensure that those patients who need home, who can go home but need some sort of re-enablement, have access to that, as well as reducing deconditioning while they're in hospital and making sure we have the right rehab areas as well. And I think those are the main areas that we're really talking about in terms of innovation. And I think that's where I will probably stop there given time. And there are just a few more slides just talking about where those innovations may be. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. We do have a couple of questions for you if you have a few more minutes. There's one that asks, we are working with a hospital currently to develop an AI product for emergency care. We are planning to work with other institutions to get access to more data for a more diverse patient population and more usability validation. Would we be able to use these funds to do this?
So from my point, yes, but there may be rules within this. But I would have thought that we should be able to work in partnership to help develop areas as well.
Yeah, partnerships are definitely encouraged in this competition. Apologies, the Q&A box keeps running around. Just to double check on the urgent and emergency care competition, is it okay for this to be led by a PCN and based on primary care transformation rather than secondary care?
And the short answer to that is yes, most definitely, because obviously the primary care and the ability, we know from research that more continuity of care leads to reduced hospitalizations and longer life expectancy. So definitely there's a complete link here between primary care and the urgent emergency care world. And I think it's that interface which is very, very important. So absolutely.
Does the project have scope for AI-based triage for primary care to GP practice, UTC
yes.
or A&E?
Yes, it does, is the answer, Paul. That's absolutely fine. I think AI is one of those areas where I'm very interested in. I think the important thing here is that it would be AI in its wider sense, because I think AI is also really useful at gaining clinical information during a patient's pathway. It's not just about how you maybe redirect patients into different services. It's also about how you collect clinical information during that journey as well, so the patient doesn't need to continue to repeat it, but more importantly, the clinician has access to that information during their journey.
Does an NHS rehabilitation centre qualify as an NHS partner organisation?
Yes, I think so.
I would
don't
say
see why
so.
not. We've got one from CF, John Fitzpatrick. Shall I just quickly answer that one? With detection of NSTEMI?
Yeah, if you can see them, absolutely.
I can see them. And yes, definitely in scope for that. I think point of care testing, I am also very interested in, not just in A&E, but how can you produce point of care testing much earlier in the patient journey, i.e. either with the ambulance or indeed with the patient themselves. And sort of lateral flows would be a classic example, not in NSTEMIs and STEMIs, but in terms of infections, viruses, bacterial, how do you differentiate between bacteria and viral infections, are all definitely in scope from my point of view.
Thank you. Supporting workforce can be a broad topic. For example, ambient documentation in emergency care or critical care is one. Is the competition focused on projects that involve front door only?
Sorry, say that again. I can't see that question, so I'm
It's towards the bottom, so
okay. Don't
it's
worry. Keep
Bisanka. So supporting workforce can be a broad topic.
yeah.
For example, ambient documentation in emergency care or critical care is one. Is the competition focused on projects that involve front door only?
No, I think you've got to go broadly, because I mean this could be around social care staff, it could be around diagnostic staff, it could be around hospital staff. I mean, I'm very interested in frailty pathways and how do you develop a workforce which may be more ambitious around how we care for frailty in different settings. It would include staffing around hospital at home. So I think there's an awful lot here, and it is a very broad subject. But I think it's right to be broad because we want to look for those different innovations from different areas.
There's a couple more. What are the common reasons good applications are rejected or not considered?
You've probably got yours. I mean, for me, it's making sure you get the right information in, and really how do you make sure this is related to urgent emergency care, and where you think the benefits are going to be, and if you've got any information about the impact, because I think the impact and evaluation of those innovations and research is the most important aspect for me.
Thank you, Julian. To add to that, in the assessment process, we have a different pool of experts. We have subject matter experts, we have commercial experts and implementation experts. So we are looking for applications that are going to be well-rounded. So from the clinical point of view, you have everything that Julian has just mentioned. But also we would need you to elaborate on your commercial strategy, on your IP strategy. We would need you to elaborate on the study that you are proposing and how you will be evaluating the impact, and also the kind of evidence you're providing, costs. So what makes a good application is a very difficult question with a very big answer, because there's a lot of different pieces that need to come together. And you can have a look at the applicants, the guidance for applicants. That would definitely help with that. Would this phase benefit from mobile solutions to support the increase in capacity in UTEC and help in reducing the waiting times at A&E?
Yes, I think so. I mean, when you talk about, I'm not quite sure what you mean about mobile solutions, but it sounds innovative, so I'm going to go with that. But absolutely, it is to do with how do we increase capacity and across all parts of the UEC pathway.
Retaining workforce, is protecting emotional well-being of frontline staff in scope to prevent day lost, burnout, staff leaving?
Yes. Short answer, definitely.
I mean, I guess that emotional well-being in frontline staff is a big problem to address. We have an asset management device, an asset management medical device tracking mobile app that uses AI to evaluate and make recommendations on any device that is tracked, based around accessibility for clinicians, bed, community, A&E beds. Quite literally, we can track anything. Do you think we would have scope for this phase?
I think so. I mean, we're talking, I mean, there's obviously the bed management is the classic one where we track patients through different parts of the service. But I think there is a lot more here about how do we track what's happening with wearables in terms of monitoring, in terms of how patients flow through a system, and timestamps, which help us just understand pathways of flow. So yes, I do think that would be in scope.
Thank you. We should like to submit with a focus on children and young people to reduce need for procedural sedation and medication to speed time to discharge.
Yes, Paul. Yes, Paul, that would be in scope as well. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be in scope. And you know, anything we can do to try and make it, I mean, that sounds almost like a sort of better quality of care for patients, in especially young people as well. So I definitely that would be in scope.
And then we have Oliver from Pyrexia, who has a question about workforce needs. So that startup works on automating back office workflows across healthcare with a strong focus on workforce efficiencies like recruitment, compliance, and governance. In the context of urgent care, this would facilitate staff movement between organizations, for instance, from partner organizations' sites to help cover staffing gaps, quicker onboarding, and much lower workloads for ensuring staff are meeting their compliance and governance requirements. We can also support international recruitment and therefore help recruitment into rota gaps, etc. Is this something that would be within scope?
I would have thought so. I don't see why that wouldn't be in scope. Obviously, it's the impact that we would have to balance against other projects, but that would definitely be something which we are looking at, how you cross-fertilize, especially as staff and doctors and nurses need to move between different environments more and more. I believe in the future there'll be much more movement between hospitals and community and primary care, etc. So I think anything where you can be able to transfer your information between those different organizations will definitely help.
We are working with a social prescribing platform. This can open up a number of signposting options for patients. This is primary care initiative, but has capacity for other services to use this system, including the urgent and emergency care department. Would you consider this as a project to tackle UEC footfall?
Yes, I mean, a lot of social prescribing comes into high intensity use, so I'd be interested to see how that works in the context of high intensity use patients, or even identifying those patients who are potentially going to become high intensity use. So I think social prescribing around those areas really does help.
Brilliant, thank you. So I don't think we're going to be able to answer all of your questions. Just wanted to say, if we don't manage to, please drop us an email to the SBRI email address, and we'll see what we can do. I'm going to see if there's any more questions for you specifically, Julian. We've gone through that one.
The Central Command Centre is in scope, yes, is what I would say.
Oh, there's, yeah, I don't know if that's the last one that has come through. We have
yes, that is in scope.
Okay. So the Central Command Center stuff with ED, is that what you were referring to?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we do have a few more questions that are a bit more a bit broader and not also for the rest of our team. How many projects will be funded within the UEC challenge? We don't have a specific number. It will depend on the quality of the applications and the budget that we have. So all of the projects can request up to £500,000. So depending on how many projects will request for the maximum amount, we might be able to fund more or less, but also it is strictly limited to projects that high quality projects. It is a quite competitive process. So in short, we don't know. There's no specific number. As the phase 3 programs are focused on real-world evidence generation rather than clinical efficacy, will the scope be confined to data routinely collected in the NHS partner? think so. So I guess it depends on, you will need to get approval, ethical approval, to get any kind of data out of your study. So whether or not you're going to be able to get any data that is on top of the standard would depend on your ethical approval committee, I would think. Should the clinically tested requirement be done in the NHS partner, or can it be done in other European Union clinics? We have several research partners in the EU. You can have data that has been collected outside of the UK. However, you need to prove that your innovation will bring benefits to the UK population. We have, I believe this might have been a question from Michelle. We have a class 1 software as a medical device for remote monitoring and rehabilitation, currently used in a live patient usability research project. Oh. No, it's gone. A research project with a university and NHS trust. We have several stroke teams interested in pilots and are interested in this call to deliver this and maximize the evidence. Does this appear to be a suitable project? I would say this is probably a question that would need a bit more thought to be answered. And since Michelle is not here anymore to answer, if you could drop us an email, that would probably be more helpful. So if anybody does have any more questions for Julian, these, as I mentioned earlier, this is the time, because he's here now. So that is the time for you to ask any more questions from him. Can we bring data that hasn't been gathered during a clinical trial? What exactly do you mean, Priestley? Can you expand on that a little bit? Is that like a proof of concept, like lab-based data? So I think that if I understand correctly, and there's no clinical data, and you only have a proof of concept with, if you only have a proof of concept, this competition would be, your innovation would be too early stage for this competition. So is it a point blank no, if not C marked? We seem to match perfectly. If it's not C marked, but it is in use in an NHS trust at the moment, with plans to get CE marking, then it could be a yes. But it needs to show that that is a safe and ready to be implemented solution. I will scroll through. So we can answer a couple more questions. Julian, not sure if you have a bit more time to stay on, but I do not seem to be able to see any further questions specifically for you.
I think there's some questions here just about limited English settings. I think we've answered that one to say with the Welsh Health Board. So yes, it can be in other countries and other settings, but it needs to be relevant to the English system, I think, in the end. I think the UK CE one we've answered as well. I mean, more it should be, but I mean, obviously we can look at it to see exactly where it's being used and how it's being used and what's happening. And medical information sharing, yes, definitely around medical information sharing is a part of the scope, because that's really important to how patients move through the urgent emergency care system.
If a clinical partner, NHS hospital, would like to help and they agreed clinically to have the innovation implemented in their hospital, but struggling with the funding and welcome the idea of evaluating the innovation to build long-term funding channels, would that be appropriate clinical partner? Would we need to submit an application to show the willingness of the trust to adopt our innovation? So these are funds that you would be able to request, funds for the hospital and the site to implement your innovation. You will need to show willingness of the site in your application. You will need a named person from that organization, that hospital, to be part of your application and agree to join the team. What about dose optimization system and medical device for personalized co-therapy for a patient? Would this be within scope? I think that sounds it doesn't sound to me, but I might be misunderstanding, doesn't sound to me that it really fits within either of the challenges. I don't know if, Julian, there's any dose optimization system that can help in urgent and emergency care.
I can't see the question to really, I can't quite hear what it is. So just say that again.
What about dose optimization systems, a medical device for personal?
I think, yeah, I'm not sure that's going to be in scope for this particular one. I think those are more sort of AI around radiology and radiation dosing, I suspect. And I think that's probably not so much in scope for this.
Yeah,
sorry, guys.
That was my my understanding of the question as well. This one we have answered already. How flexible is the starting date of the project? We aim to get all the projects starting and between January and February. That we do not have much flexibility. We can be flexible in terms of days, not in terms of weeks. Oh, this doesn't seem to be a question. In the context of a digital app, how far along in the development produce cycle does the technical solution need to be before applying? Well, obviously digital solutions do not require UK or a CA or CE marking. However, we do still require them to have all the regulatory approval and to have considered the DTAC So how far along it should be, it's the same idea. It should be an innovation almost ready for implementation. Can an NHS site act as lead applicant with multiple SMEs as partners within the same grant application? For example, if multiple vendors with similar products for evaluation. This is quite of an unusual situation. We would expect the other way around. We would expect to see one SME with one product being implemented in different sites. We do not, I wouldn't expect an NHS site to have multiple SMEs as partners. That kind of brings a lot of questions in terms of commercialization of the innovation, of IP ownership. But Alex, if you want to give a bit more detail to your question, you're more than welcome to drop us an email. If a solution is not yet in use in any NHS trust, but is being validated with a KOL in another country outside of the UK, is it excluded from this phase 3, or can we apply? An innovation that has been validated, abroad, could be eligible, but it still needs to satisfy all of the eligibility criteria in terms of regulatory approvals. And can you please confirm that this SBRI is for innovations that have already demonstrated validity and usability, so it is used already in at least one NHS location? So it has to have already demonstrated validity and usability. So it should, yes, it should be at least in one NHS location. Is then this to demonstrate the benefit for A&E? You do, well, it depends if you are applying for the urgent and emergency care call petition. I would say that you would need to have proven that you need to have some data of some that proves that the innovation can be used in A&E. I would say that we are coming onto time. I would like to thank our speaker very, very much. Their time has been it's very valued. And I would like to inform everybody that we will be organizing a Q&A session on the 13th of August from 2 to 3:30 in the afternoon. There's a link to register in the slides that we will be sharing later. And in this Q&A session, there will be a little workshop on tips on how to put in a compelling application to the program. And you will also have the chance of speaking one-on-one with one of my colleagues from the SBRI Program Management Office to discuss the eligibility of your innovation. There's a few of our details at the end of this slide. Please reach out to our email address or our there's a phone number as well if you have any other question for us. And again, Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Julian, Nikki, Michelle, Charmaine, and Mary for providing us with your expertise and your help. Have a good rest of your day, everybody, and thank you again.